Okay, so while Melissa does that, I'll go ahead and have a brief minute to introduce myself. Hopefully I'm on screen right now. Okay, so my name is Eileen Suazo, and I am the Deputy Director of Screening, Inclusion, and Assessment at the ELC of Miami-Dade and Monroe, and we appreciate you taking the time to attend today's training. Although we've shared the importance of developmental screenings and their timely submission with you before, we're super excited to share a redesigned training that focuses on the quality of ASQs. We encourage you to pay close attention, as there will be a post-assessment emailed to you after the training. This assessment will help us coach our providers so that you too will become screening champions in our community. If you have any questions throughout the training, we ask that you kindly type them in the chat and we will address them as quickly as possible. I proudly hand it over to screening champion Melissa Lorenzo from Citrus Health Network to begin our training today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Eileen. I know that we had some technical difficulties, but these are all of the things of coming into 2024 and the last couple of years of learning how to navigate all things Zoom. And hopefully in the next 10 years, we'll all become experts on it. So thank you again. You are here for the Florida training on the ASQ-3 and ASQ SE-2. I know that in the earlier opening session, Dr. Annabelle Espinosa gave an intro and overview as to my experiences. I've been here with Citrus Health Network for almost 10 years as the program coordinator for the developmental screening and follow-up program. Our team here at Citrus provides this support to across Miami-Dade and Monroe County, reviewing these screeners, right? Reviewing the ASQ-3 and ASQ SE-2 with parents and providers such as you all here. I've seen in the chat people who we have communicated with, partnered with, providers, very familiar to myself and our team. So we are welcoming you here today. And again, if you have questions in the chat, please feel free to use that. We're a large group, and so we want to make sure that we address any concerns. And if there's anything that we can't get to, certainly reach out to the PDI team and to the ELC. If there's any kind of overarching theme that we haven't been able to address, we're always here to help you all. This training, we are recognizing that this is a project supported by the Preschool Development Grant, Birth Through 5 initiative, and here's the grant information from the administration, the Office of Child Care Administration for Children and Families, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So why are you here? I know Annabelle earlier had mentioned the importance of screening, and it's kind of talking about a snapshot of a child at that moment in time. And so Eileen did mention that at the end, you'll receive a link to a post test. You'll just want to pay attention to these little owls, the little owls with the cap. Essentially what this means is that these are important things to remember, right? So anytime we're seeing this on the slide, pay attention to that. You're not going to get a grade. You're not going to get in trouble with your employers or anything like that. This is just helping us for future trainings, helping us to know what is it that we might need to focus on next time and about this screener, the ASQ-3 and SE. So who is this training for? Most of you are early learning providers. I've seen that, but you also may be a parent or a family member that wants to share this knowledge with other people. But essentially, this training is going to be for those folks who talk to parents about developmental screening, who participate in the screening, whether you're an administrator, a director, a direct early learning care staff, to support the parents during the screening process, whoever works together with families to screen, and if you're directly screening children in the early learning center. And of course, you can certainly collaborate with your local early learning coalition team to develop a plan on how you're going to best support a child's development in school and at home. this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about, but spread throughout. We're going to be talking about what Florida's screening requirements are for the school readiness program, why we screen, why it's important to include parents and the benefits of parent reporting about the screeners. We're going to talk about certain features and highlighting the ASQ-3 and the ASQ SE-2. What are some recommended practices for how to work together with parents to screen and how to talk to parents about screening? And I'm going to share with you some resources throughout the presentation on follow-up activities for the home and the school. So here's that little owl. So what is screening? I'd love to think about and put it in the chat as to what it is. What do you all think screening is? So I'd like to see, what are some words that come to mind when you're thinking about screening? And essentially, I wanted to kind of talk about what it's not as well, right? So that's also something that's going to help ground your conversations with a parent. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk about that. But essentially, screening is administering a brief tool to help children identify, and I'll kind of go from the bottom up. You see this triangle, right? This is helping to identify children who are developing on schedule. You may know this as developing typically because a screener, the ASQ-3 and the SE does review results that are in the typical area. So we are trying to basically cast what's called like a broad net for children who are developing on schedule. So most children will be developing on schedule. You're going to identify children who may definitely benefit from additional support. So that would be kind of some children may need some of that support. And the screening identifies a few of those children who might need further evaluations to determine if they may be eligible for additional services. Screening helps gather that information to identify children who, let me start at the top. And I want to kind of gauge, are you all familiar with this top part here, the few children? Early steps or fiddlers? Yeah, I saw some folks talking about in the chat that screening is a way to gauge child's development. Yes, a type of assessment that helps teachers identify students who are not meeting grade level learning goals. And I saw you mention some of that too, but there are entities that do address children with a further broader assessment, like early steps. I'm going to be switching screens here. So do you all see, I don't know if, give me a thumbs up. This is early steps. Early steps provides.
Melissa, we're still seeing the what is screening on the screen.
Oh no, okay. Thank you for letting me know. Let me kind of go back. It looks like my share screen is not working. So either way, I will give you a rundown of what Early Steps is. In Florida, Early Steps provides free early intervention, identification, evaluation supports to children who are ages 0 to 3. This is a free program. It doesn't charge a parent. It is regardless of insurance or anything like that. A parent can actually call in to recommend or request an evaluation from Early Steps and so on. I want to see if I can share my screen here. Hold on, because I really think it's such important information. Give me 1 second. Let me share.
I also went ahead and put the documents in the chat. So there's a link there in case anyone wants to open them on their end. They should be able to access them that way.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay. So this is a nice handout that explains to you what Florida's Early Steps program is. They work in partnership with families. And they also deliver services directly to children who are needing individualized supports and services. Again, these are children who are found eligible for these services from infants to 3 years of age. If they have any kind of developmental delay or condition, and again, I did highlight that there's no income requirement, there's no insurance requirement, and this is free. So even if you Google Early Steps Florida, you'll be able to find that resource of information. So again, what you are doing as early learning providers is screening the children. And if we've identified that there is a need to evaluate further, then Early Steps for those little ones that are 0 to 3 is going to be a kind of like a really nice start for families. Let me kind of go into back to my presentation here. Fiddlers, which is what you may have heard or familiarize yourself with as Child Find Services. And I'm gonna show that to you. I know we're kind of toggling between screens, but I'll move quickly. Fiddlers is through the Department of Education. The Child Find programs, if you think about that word Child Find, is kind of like finding children who may need a comprehensive assessment for children 3 to 5. I think what's really nice to see is that you have agencies in Florida that are supporting children's development and potential delays and disabilities from birth all the way to 5 years of age before they're entering kindergarten. So Fiddler's Child Find provides these comprehensive assessments for children ages 3 to 5, and it addresses any, delays in development, speech, language, vision, and hearing. But you certainly have local Fiddler's Child Find here in Miami-Dade County and Monroe, but it's also available to those across the state in case there's anyone here today that is not in Miami-Dade County. You can certainly call, and thank you, Eileen, for sharing that resource. Let me go ahead and go back to our presentation. Perfect. Okay. So again, you're screening to identify most of these children, some of these children, and maybe a few who might need additional supports. And so now let's go into why. I mean, I think most of you understand the importance of early education in a young child's life. You wouldn't be here if you weren't passionate about this work, but we wanted to really dive in because it is a super screening Saturday, right? Why is it that we're screening during early childhood? Little ones' brains are at its most flexible. They are in the most rapid period of growth during these first 5 critical years. What we do know is that 1 in 6 children are affected by a developmental, a behavioral, or a learning disability. So we want to certainly screen children as early as possible. There is research to support what happens if we don't screen. So without the screening tools, research suggests that only 14 to 50% of children are identified. However, with the screening tools, look at that number. We're capturing more and able to identify between 70 and 80% of children identified if we're screening more. So we are certainly doing that part and serving as that role of keeping our watch over children's development. And the earlier a delay is identified and support is provided, the better a child's chance of substantial improvement. Like, it's better outcomes if we're screening early and constantly screening, right? We want to monitor a child's development. You will have children that will need those individualized supports early on. They may need special education supports. And some children may need special education services or these interventions throughout all of their school career. But it's certainly going to help minimize and decrease behavioral concerns. It's going to certainly increase their positive outcomes and even their positive attitudes towards learning in school. So this is why we are doing these screenings during early childhood periods. And we will go into why you're here, to learn about. And if most of you are using the ASQ-3 and ASQ-SE, we're really hoping that what you're going to gain today is understanding even what's best practice in using the ASQ-3 and SE. And we'll kind of go into more of what the requirements are in the Florida School Readiness Program. So what are these tools? These are parent-completed screening tools for children as young as 1 month, all the way up to 5.5 years of age. They identify children who are developing on schedule, and they're helping identify children who may be at risk for either developmental delays. So that would be specifically for the ASQ-3, and those who may be at risk for social emotional delays. So the ASQ SE-2, so SE is social emotional. 3 actually means the 3rd edition, by the way, on ASQ-3, and 2 means the 2nd edition. So I am going to share. I wanted to point out a couple of things for you to pay attention on the ASQ screener. And let's stop sharing. I'm going to share again. Okay, so this is an example of an ASQ-3. You'll see that up here. I don't know if you see my cursor, but I'm going to kind of guide you towards the top. This is an example of what an ASQ-3 looks like for 16-month-old. I did want to highlight a specific, there's a window by which you need to administer these screeners. So this applies for any child, and I'll see if maybe you can see that, for a child that's 15 months, 0 days to 16 months, 30 days. So again, there is a window of time completion. You're looking at 1 in a series. So this is an ASQ-3, depending on the age of the child, you and the parents are going to be working with on different questionnaires. Okay, let me show you. Basically, you have demographic information. That is, who's completing it, whether it's the parent or the teacher, the email address, child identification information. I wanted to show you. Wow, that's big. But either way, I think that's helpful. These are some important points to remember when it comes to these screeners, right? Here it's going to tell you, try these activities with the child before making a response. You're going to make completing this questionnaire fun. This is not like sit in front of a chair and a table, certainly not for a 16-month-old. Make sure your child is rested and fed. We certainly don't want to, review a screener or try these activities on children who are tired, who are hungry, especially little ones. And then it just gives information as to when that screener should be completed. So these are some important points to remember. Demographic information, and I'm going to now show you the ASQ SE. Let me just go in here. Thank you guys for being so patient with me. I wanted to highlight something here now. This is the ASQ SE for this interval of a 6-month questionnaire. Now, here is something to really pay attention to. This 6-month questionnaire is given for a baby that is not 6 months old, but is a baby that is 3 months, 0 days through 8 months, 30 days. So there is this window by which you are administering the screener for a little one. The same front page applies. That's demographic information. And now I wanted to highlight, this is different. I wanted to show you the difference. There are always important points to remember between the ASQ-3, the ASQ-SE, and this one's a little different. I want you to notice that. Under important points to remember, it's asking you to answer questions based off of what you know about your baby's behavior. It's asking you to answer questions based on your baby's usual behavior. Same, not when your baby is sick, very tired, or hungry. Now, here's another thing to note. Caregivers who know the baby well and spend more than 15 to 20 hours per week with the baby should complete the ASQ SE-2, right? That's different. Babies are, social babies. They rely on a caregiver who is nurturing, who knows them well. If you don't spend that much time with the child, you may not have an accurate ASQ in all likelihood. Or if it's a child that may have just started the learning center and you're giving or kind of taking care of that ASQ without really knowing that baby, those results could, be skewed, right? So I just wanted to show you that there are some differences and some similarities too between the two. Let me go back to our presentation. And I know that there are, just checking the chat in case there's any questions.
We have the chat. I think we've answered all of the questions, Melissa, so you're
Perfect.
good.
Thank you, Eileen.
You're about half an hour in.
Awesome. Thanks. So here in Florida, the Florida School Readiness Program does require that all parents of children 0 to 5, birth to 5, are offered these developmental and social emotional screening. And then that there is follow-up depending on the results, but for all children in the School Readiness Program, they are offered screening. They are, again, they can have their child screened by the Early Learning Center staff, or the parents can complete it themselves. And all of those screenings are entered into the state online portal, as you all know it, to be called the EFS mod. And then, of course, the School Readiness Program in Florida does provide training for the ELC staff and to coach and support these early learning providers. There is that little owl again. So we wanted to highlight these things, right? Screening does not diagnose delays or disabilities. There are assessment tools that specifically do this role. Screening is just, I want you to kind of keep like a visual of like a sifter. If you think about when you're baking and you're using flour and you're sifting, you're kind of like trying to cast this wider net, or if you're fishing with a net, it's sifting it. Specific assessment tools like you may have heard the Battelle and other assessment tools do provide more in-depth evaluations and assessments of children. It does, an ASQ screener does not diagnose these delays. Screening also does not identify specific child goals. I think I heard someone in the chat, or not heard, I read somewhere in the chat that it identifies goals, but it does not identify specific goals to target. What screening does do is that it can identify certain areas where a child may need that support, whether at home or in the classroom. There are tools like Teaching Strategies Goal. Those are specifically to help target supports for a child based off of goals and objectives. So for example, an example of like a general area is that we're going to encourage Juan to participate in fine motor activities. Now, a specific goal, like something mentioned in Teaching Strategies Goal, a specific goal will be like, he's going to hold, child is going to hold a pencil using an adult tripod grasp, and that is such a specific targeted goal. This is very different than what screening does. With screening, we are just identifying areas where the child may need support. Oops, sorry, let me go back. Oh no, hold on. Okay, this is an example of how screening with the ASQ-3 and the ASQ SE-2 fits into the School Readiness Program. So you kind of can follow the arrows with me. This highlighted in red is specifically to the Florida School Readiness process. So children get screened using these tools, and you can have one of three outcomes. Or these are the general areas where the children will come out in, right? So you can have to the left, after that, they can come out in the concern area, or a possibility we might want to refer this child for further assessments. I'm going to follow it through the red arrow, and we kind of go through a concern analysis. Essentially, we're trying to figure out why, you know, these results are giving us this information, right? So there are children who can come out in the monitoring area, right? Children in the monitoring area, we still want to discuss the results of this ASQ, and it could kind of go either way. We might want to refer a child for further evaluation. If you see early steps and fiddlers, again, that those two entities in Florida that identify children 0 to 5 with a comprehensive evaluation and assessment. And then they may be eligible for services, or they may not. They may be on schedule. There are children who come out on schedule, or what's called that typical area. But I wanted to kind of give you, this is like a workflow of what we do in Florida with children's results of the ASQ. Oh my goodness, sorry about that, guys. After a concern analysis, a couple of things can happen. If we're thinking that we want to monitor this child a little bit based off of if a child is in concern or monitoring, we can continue to do ongoing assessments. We can provide referrals and supports to other providers. We provide resources to families and to early learning center staff, and we can send like an action plan to the center and to the parent. What I like about this, and something just to kind of keep in mind, is that all children who are screened are getting a follow-up, which is nice because we want to make sure that children are, and parents are, or parents rather, are aware of their child's development, that centers are aware that we are just following up. It's not just checking off a box, but there is conversations around these screening results. And all of this is free, which is such a benefit to the families across those participating in the school readiness program. So I'd like to hear just a couple of like thoughts about what are some benefits of parent report? What are some benefits to including parents? What are some benefits to having their feedback? I'd love to hear in the chat, why is it important to have parents report about their child? They participate, to someone, Janine, thank you. They participate in the child's education. Anyone else? So let's see why. We're going to talk about why it's beneficial for parents to engage with all of this process. Yeah, I think I heard some of that. So it does educate a parent about development. They know their child, but they may not know what are some age appropriate expectations about their child's development. They may need some help in supporting the child in their home. Engaging and including a parent in this process of screening helps bridge that communication between a parent and a teacher. You as an educator, you spend such a large portion of time with their child. We live in a 24-hour like time. Parents are working multiple jobs. They have so many responsibilities, and they are entrusting and bringing their little one to you that spends 8, 9, and even sometimes 12-hour days. And so bridging that and strengthening that relationship is so important, right? Parents and teachers learn about the child's development. So having them part of that, you know, your little one is, I noticed that they're crawling more today, or the, you know, engaging a parent in screening could include, Mom, you know, I noticed that they weren't doing that here today. Are they doing that at home? You know, that children behave differently across environments. And it just honestly empowers them to advocate for them. We want to include that separation and what I call working in silos, where teachers doing their thing, parents doing their thing. I noticed that including them, and research does support that, including them as part of this process just has better outcomes. Let me see. Important because they can know what to expect. I'm just checking the chat. It's important because they can know what to expect in their child's education if the child's development is age appropriate. I love that. Oh, I love that. Comparing information you have and the parents. Absolutely. That's so important. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Some more about this, right? What are the benefits of parent reporting? It increases the accuracy of the screening. Parents know their child best. The ASQ, and again, I don't know if you all know this, or if you do, let's support each other on this. The ASQ-3 and the SE-2 were developed and researched with this in mind. The questions are easy to, they're written in easy language, they're easy to understand. It asks about skills that can be easily observed, or at least that you can kind of elicit from a child in many environments or many home environments. So it does increase the accuracy of the screening. Children show optimum skills in natural environments with adults they know well. Infants and real little ones, they are particularly sensitive to unfamiliar caregivers, right? They need to kind of, you know, test the waters a little bit. And so they have to learn to trust and to separate from, you know, their trusted adults. Takes time, right? So that's also a component to the benefits of parent report. Parents will report more emerging skills. And what do we mean by that? They're going to show these emerging skills in the environments where they feel the most comfortable. So if they were home for majority of time before they enter their learning center, parents are going to report, yes, they're doing that at home. They've been doing that at home. So for example, first words, their first steps. So of course, that's why you want to include the parent report when you're reviewing screenings or completing screenings with the parent rather. Professionals may even underestimate some skills. I know a lot of the times, I was an early childhood teacher too, so I do have that perspective and experience of being with very little ones. I taught toddlers for years, and that toddlers and little ones are kind of like my special place. But professionals, we often worry or may worry about parents being, whether it's in denial or maybe overestimating some of the skills. But something to note, the errors can go in both directions. So we can even underestimate that if a parent's reporting that and we may not be seeing that. So just to kind of keep those things in mind. And again, I think I've highlighted this before, that children can do different things at home than at school. If they're not trusting a provider or a teacher yet because they just started the learning center, some children are slower to warm up. Some children may take a little bit more time. So that's something to think about as well, and be attuned to that with little ones. And also, parent concerns are highly predictive of child outcomes. If a parent is saying that they alone are concerned about a child or their child's development, that alone can be indicative of that we're probably certainly want to get more information from a child, or, you know, about a child. We need to certainly address any parent concerns about their child's development. Again, the ASQ research has been done, and it says 93% agreement between parent and professionals, meaning they have found that there is combined agreement between the parents and professionals. What we know is that this information about screening and the benefits of including a parent, they're accurate reporters. Parents are accurate reporters. Combining and collaborating with a parent is going to certainly increase that agreement between a parent and a provider. So we want to certainly support that. Parents are the experts on their child. You certainly are experts on child development. So combining those is like the perfect formula. So let's go into more about the features of the ASQ-3 and the SE-2. The ASQ-3 is divided into 5 areas and domains. There are 6 questions in each of these following 5 areas. There's communication. Let me just check the chat. Let me just check the chat. We'll go over kind of what the process is. I know that there's questions about the screenings, but we can kind of address that too later on. I see your questions, Helen. The areas of communication is split into 2. So, and it doesn't show that way. I'm going to show it to you. I'll review that screener with you now. In communication, it's divided into 2 areas, which is the expressive part of communication. So what comes out, it's basically what you hear a child saying. So this could be babbling in little ones, sounds in babies, word approximations in little toddlers, children that are just learning to use those single words, and full sentences in preschoolers. So it's what comes out, right? Receptive is what comes in. So it refers to what the child is hearing, how the child is processing information. It could include questions such as, does your child turn their head if they hear a loud sound? Can the child follow directions? So that's the receptive part of communication. Gross motor is how they move their head, their body. It's like basically the large muscles of their body, their arms, their legs. Fine motor is the eye, hand, and finger coordination and strength. So how they pick up and release things, how they hold a pencil, how they scribble, things like that. Problem solving is how they learn and play, and what we call like those pre-academic skills, or another way to just remember that is like the cognitive area of development in little ones. Personal social on the ASQ-3 is split up into, so you have these 2 domains between communication and personal social that have 2, they're kind of split into. Personal social split up into what's called self-help skills. So dressing, feeding, toileting, and social skills such as how they interact with others. Let me kind of show you some of these features. And let's jump in. Okay, I'll put this up just a little bit, if that's not too big. Okay, so these are the 5 domains. This is communication. You have 6 questions, and you'll have opportunities to answer whether it's yes, sometimes, or not yet. But these are split up. This is for 16-month-old or the 16-month ASQ. And this is questions such as, does your child point? Does your child say more words? When your child wants something, like number 3, do they tell you by pointing to it? And then here you can see the difference, right? So this is when you ask your child, does he go into, when you ask your child to, does he go into the room to find a familiar toy? So you can ask the child, go bring me your ball, bring me your shoe. Is that, just a quick quiz, is that receptive or expressive communication? What does number 3 address? if I am asking a child to go bring me something, are we looking at receptive or expressive communication? Receptive, ding, ding, good job, guys. Yes, it's what they're hearing, right? Good job. Gross motor, here we're looking at standing up in the middle of the floor. Can they climb? And so this is just kind of like the breakdown of these 5 domains. You have fine motor. For this age, we're looking at, can they turn the pages of a book? Can they throw a small ball, right? Using their arm. Can they stack? Here we're looking at kind of, do they make, we're not asking if they're Picasso. We're just asking, can they just take that pencil or that crayon and like just try to draw, right? And then problem solving is, you know, after scribbling back and forth on paper with a crayon, do they copy you? So it's almost like, I'm going to do it as a teacher. Can you do it? Right? We're looking at imitation skills too. Can they drop a crumb or a Cheerio into a small clear bottle? So that's kind of like, can I figure out how to do that? And then here's some other areas kind of going into the problem solving and then personal social. So I had highlighted for you in the personal social, it's kind of split in 2. We're looking at like self-help skills, personal social, sometimes provider, this could seem confusing sometimes when you're looking at personal social, you're thinking, how is that self-help skills? It's like how they're helping themselves, personal, right? It's about themselves and helping. Let me kind of go in here. I'm not going to go to the overall questions just yet, but I wanted to show you these 5 domains. So under personal social, you're looking at, can a child feed themselves? Can they dress themselves or undress, right? We're not expecting just yet for a child to put on their shirt, but can they take off their socks? Can they take off a hat? We're here in sunny South Florida for the most part. There's not a lot of hat wearing, but maybe a lot of sock wearing, right? So taking off socks. Looking in the mirror, basically a sense of self. Do they know, okay, that's me, right? So that's kind of the breakdown. And I'm going to go into the overall questions and beyond later on. So let's go back to the presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions as we go. Okay, so you have the response options and the scoring. So we looked at the 3 areas where you have responses. And so a parent and or the provider answers whether it's yes, my child is doing this skill. Sometimes my child is beginning to show this skill and not yet. My child's not there just yet and not able to do that yet. I wanted to also mention to you, this is important. The questions go from easier to the more difficult questions. So questions 1 are the easiest, and the question 6 all the way to 6 is the most difficult. Now, this is important to understand. The most difficult skill, like question number 6, is an average skill for that age. This is essentially capturing what, on average, children within this age range are able to do. It's not what we kind of call testing them out, or they're like it's way beyond what they're able to do. No, these questions have been researched, and these are going from the easiest to the most difficult average skill for that age. So we have those features again about not yet and why not. So you do have children that when you're scoring that, no, my child is not yet doing that. What I want you to think about is when you're looking at these questions as to if a parent completes it and you see that they have selected in that middle part, not yet. Let me go back because I think it's so important. If we were in person, everyone, I would have everyone bring in their own ASQ. Like, let's look at it together. I'm a very hands-on person. I use my hands a lot, but I wanted to explain to you that it's so important for you to get your hands on this tool, to look at it, to understand it a little bit more. I wanted to show you this part here, right? When we're talking about sometimes, or when a parent is answering this question of not yet, or if you as a provider have said, no, this child is not doing that just yet. Remember that the structure of the ASQ, I want you to remember of how this was developed and how these questions are asked, is that most of the difficult items are on age level. Remember, I mentioned to you that the easiest is number 1, the most difficult is number 6. So most children who are developing on schedule should be able to do all or most of these items on the ASQ. But there are always going to be some items or activities that children are not doing yet because they may not have had an opportunity to try these for one reason or another, okay? So let's look at communication. Let's see this one here. Number 5, does your child imitate a 2-word sentence? For example, when you say a 2-word phrase, such as mama eat, daddy play, go home, or what's this? Does your child say both words back to you? Why is it that you think they may not be doing that just yet? Any ideas? Love to hear that on the chat. Why do you think they may not be doing that just yet? Language. Yeah, we are looking at communication, right?
Melissa, I just want to let you know we're about to hit the hour mark.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Yes.
There's so much information on this training. I mean, we can go.
Maybe we can continue to reference the documents on the chat instead of switching back and forth.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you for that support.
Yep.
I appreciate that. So are we seeing the screen? Okay, perfect. So again, I want you all to consider if a child is scoring not yet, let's be curious. Let's think about why not. I know someone mentioned language. Maybe the child has had, some health issues, like some ear infections. That is why not. It's certainly something to look at further. And I've always wanted to share this kind of information for you to be very curious about why not. It's not just not yet. It's let's think about even more. A couple of the other questions ask about if they're scribbling, or if they're using a fork in one of the ASQs, and it's if they're saying why, if they've answered why not yet, think about why not. Maybe they haven't had the opportunities or don't have access to crayons at home. And when a parent completed it, they may have said, well, they're not doing that yet. It doesn't mean they can't. It just means that they hadn't been able to because they weren't given the crayons. Or think about other opportunities for a child not using a fork, maybe culturally, right? There's some cultural considerations behind. Some families don't have children use forks just yet, right? When they're that little. Reference, I wanted to highlight on the overall section, which is that last page, the last 2 pages on the ASQ. The overall section is important because it does have information that can address a parent's concern. Research does indicate that parent concerns are predictive. We did talk about that, predictive of these developmental outcomes, whether it's through developmental or about developmental delays, learning disabilities, behavioral delays. So it does address those questions on that last couple of pages, like what concerns do you have about, or what worries you about your child? So you want to pay attention to that. The quality of the skills, for example, you can have a child such as articulation, essentially how the sounds, how a child is pronouncing words. You may have a parent indicate yeses in communication all across the board, right? Like 1 through 6, the parent says yes, 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 yes. Yet in the overall section, a parent may say, he's hard to understand, right? This is why it's so important to really review these questions. The overall, it could be the only place where a parent might indicate a concern or something for you all as providers to think about is if a parent says, my child is difficult to understand. I don't understand all of the words that they're saying, right? There's nowhere else on that ASQ that's going to capture that unless you're looking at the overall section. And things like articulation can certainly remedy themselves throughout time, but sometimes a child might need something like a speech language evaluation to address articulation, something like that, the pronunciation of words and sounds, right? The overall section on the parents, on the parent completing that overall section addresses concerns about a child's vision, a child's hearing. There is question on does anyone in the family have, is there a family history of deafness or vision? Is there any concerns about vision and hearing? So that is addressed there, nowhere else on the ASQ. And even though those questions are not scored, it is so important to still discuss, to follow up with a parent as to why you want to address that, right? And any concern or what we call that red flag indicates a need for follow-up, even if the child is 5s in all areas. So even if they're like 60s or there's no concern, you certainly want to make sure that you are reviewing these overall questions with a parent. Let me see if I can, oh, wait, hold on. Did I skip one? Did that. Okay. So some of the things to note, right? Wait, did I skip one? No, okay. So on the ASQ, recommended practice is to take your time to observe the child, to try the items we talked about. There's the little ones, just sometimes, and again, children are different, but for the most part, some children might be a little bit hesitant to get to know you. They may not have had access to these items in the classroom before. Let the child practice using, the pencils, the crayons. Let the child practice banging blocks, things like that before you're going to score it. It helps to increase the accuracy of that item. It helps to gather more information about the child and who should complete it. Parents can complete, again, this tool, or these tools were developed with parents in mind, okay? Parents can complete all of the questions and providers can complete most. There are certainly those items, those overall questions, those last 2 pages of your ASQ that providers shouldn't be answering. For example, the family history of any health concerns, those are certainly things that parents should be doing. Now, best practice is for both the parent and the provider to complete or work together on one ASQ. You can combine between a parent and a provider and an early learning provider to create one final ASQ that's giving the credit for the child's skills at home and at schools. You do not, teachers, you do not need to observe the skill for it to be a yes. Okay, that's something super, super important. And yes, thank you. You will have access to the tools and the materials that we're talking about here. I know that we kind of want to get through all this important information. So again, you do not need to observe the skills to be a yes, which is why let's observe. Let's give time for the child to practice using these items and just gather more information and combine. You can combine between a parent and a provider. I have heard within our agency here at Citrus that when we're talking with providers and teachers and we're talking with parents about the screener, saying, hey, your child was screened. Yes, I did it with the teacher. That's great. That's wonderful to hear because the child is engaging in structured activities at school and the child is doing other types of activities and routines at home. So it's really, really best practice to do that. Try to combine those before. What are we talking about when I say practicing activities before finalizing? most of the materials that are on the ASQ are things that most parents have in the house. But of course, there are certainly opportunities or times that parents may not have access to some of these materials at home. So here are some of the things that some providers have done, and this is maybe a nice opportunity for you all, is create an ASQ little kit. You can use really large, like those little freezer bags, and say, hey mom, for this screener, here's a little kit to take home and try these things at home. Here's scissors, here's some crayons, here's some markers. This is kind of like the breakdown of what some of these activities need, like stacking, books. It really just depends. I think best practice is if you don't have it, here's a kit. Or if you don't have some of these items, here's something that you can borrow, like a lending library of sorts. If you are completing the ASQ as a teacher, make sure that these materials are available to the children to explore, to familiarize themselves with before you're going to finalize that item. And then some teachers have invited a parent to come into their classroom and spend time together. That might be a really nice opportunity to collaborate with a family, is inviting them in with the child in the classroom. And again, that just strengthens the communication and the relationship that you have with your parents. So what are you guys thinking so far? Do you all are anticipating like any challenges for engaging and including parents as part of this process? Any concerns or hesitations towards that? Do you all combine your screeners? And if you don't, that's okay too, but I'm curious as to whether or not you all have combined, or is that kind of part of your practice in combining screeners together, like working on one final one? Love to hear about that. And again, you do have your ELC, your local ELC, if you're here in Miami-Dade County, to reach out for additional supports. And here us at Citrus Health, we are in partnership with the Early Learning Coalition to provide those follow-up supports and activities and helping to bridge that communication between the parents and the providers. Hopefully you have a couple of ideas to try out in engaging with families, like giving those materials ahead of time. Yeah, Pauline, thank you. I will talk more with the parent. I like that. I think, and I'll name this here, I think the last couple of years have been quite the challenge for all the relationships that we've had with our families and the providers, where we had to shut down and we couldn't talk to parents, and it was just so hard. And I think hopefully that we're kind of coming on to another launch of just coming back together and encouraging more frequent conversations with the families about the screener, especially because you all as early learning providers do this work all the time. And my hat's off to you all, but it's like, how do we now come back to circle after the last few years, which have been challenging? So I did want to name that here. Let's jump into the ASQ SE-2, and you guys will have these materials and why it's important to do screening on the social emotional development for children. Okay, so the differences between the ASQ-3 and the SE-2, we talked about the three addresses kind of general development, child development, and the SE-2 now is asking specifically about a child's behaviors. So it's looking at specifically how a child interacts with others, how they regulate their emotions, how they sleep, how they eat, and toileting skills. The questions do address both positive and challenging behaviors. And the response options are a little different. The response options are often or always. You have an option for sometimes to check if it's sometimes. You have a rarely or never. And then you have a separate column to check if this is an area of concern. Okay. Now, upon scoring, the higher the score on the SE-2, the higher the score, the higher the risk or there is a concern. It's the opposite with the 3. The higher the score on the 3, it means that the child is developing on schedule. Okay. So higher the score on the SE-2, risk, it's risky. We're like, I'm concerned. There's something else going on there. Where the higher the score on the 3 is saying, okay, our child is developing on schedule or is in the typical area of development. Okay. Additionally, here are some features about the SE-2. These are quick to complete. The difference is, if you notice, you don't need to try these items as opposed to the 3, the SE, I'm sorry, oh my gosh, when we're talking about SE. The ASQ-3, you should be trying these activities. With the SE, the social emotional, you do not need to try these items. Now, the parent and or provider can certainly complete it. And best practice is you encourage the parent to complete the social emotional screener. You certainly want to make sure that a parent does it because it's reporting on how the child is doing at home. And a child's behaviors may look different at home versus at school. If the child is struggling at home, the parent's report will provide information on how to best support the child at home. And if you are providing that screener, it's so important to not influence the parent's answers. We want to get a more accurate report about what the parent is seeing at home and address it in that way. Here's highlighted in yellow with our little owl. Do not combine a parent and provider ASQ SE-2. There are no right or wrong answers. These two different SEs simply give you more. So let's give you more information to talk about with a parent because children behave differently in different settings. On the ASQ-3, you can combine it to give one final, but on the SE-2, you do not. It just helps to look at why children may be developing or behaving differently at home versus at school. So that's your recommended practice. Same thing, right? We've been talking about how to interpret those scores. Because children behave so differently at home and in different settings with different caregivers, one of the first things to do when screening results are identifying a possible concern is to have the child's teacher complete a second one. So let's say the parent completed the SE through the portal, through the EFS mod portal, and you're seeing it as they came in as concerned on the SE-2. It's recommended that you as a teacher complete one as well, because if the results are concern area at school, but not at home, then something in school needs a little bit of attention, right? Now we continue to be curious about why that is. If the results are in concern area at home, but not at school, then something at home might need attention. You as a teacher can say, wow, okay, he's doing well, he's behaving well, he's sleeping well. I'm not concerned, Mom. But I noticed that on your social emotional screener, you're noting some concerns. So let's talk about that a little bit. How is it that, I can help you and try and figure things out? Now, also, there could be results in concern at home and at school. So now we're like, okay, now we're really curious about what's going on. We might want to refer this child. This child might need a more in-depth evaluation. If we're seeing together, we're seeing the same thing, we certainly want to address this early because we know earlier is best, right? So are these behaviors the same, right? So let's think about that. Let me just kind of go through my notes. Okay. So again, the ASQ SE-2 features are the best practice, recommended practice is that parents complete it and that providers take the time to get to know the child, right? The recommendation is that providers should have 15 to 20 hours a week contact time with that child, right? Ideally, it is that early learning provider that has the most time. Children are more alert and behave at kind of like their optimum best in the early part of the morning hours. I understand fully that there may be change in staff, that you may have a morning teacher and an afternoon teacher, but who is the one that is spending the most time, around 15 to 20 hours a week with that child? That's the one that should be completing it. And also a reminder, you do have, when I say take time to get to know the child, I understand and we understand fully that part of the school readiness program is that you do have a particular window of time to complete the screeners, anywhere between 30 to 45 days. So the more time a child has spent in your classroom, the better, the more you're going to have accurate results, okay? So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as well. Okay. Again, you're going to have access to these handouts. I'm just kind of doing a time check. The features of the ASQ-3 and the SE-2 overall, it is a series of parent or provider completed questionnaires ranging from 1 month of age, itty bitty babies, to 5.5 years of age for the SE-2. There is a window of time that each questionnaire is valid or accurate. When I showed you all that screening, the ASQ screener for the 6-month ASQ, SE, it says for children ages 3 months to 6 months or 8 months. There is a window of time by which that is accurate. So for example, let me see if I can kind of highlight this. Let me open this one. I think this is probably the one that I will share. I'm hoping that it gives me enough time. Give me 1 second. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. You will have, okay, now it's sharing. You're going to have this also as a resource for you on how to use these age administration charts. When I say that there is a window of time that each questionnaire is valid, for example, we were looking at a 16-month ASQ. And here are the different age administration charts. I'm hoping that you see this. Yep, okay. So for example, if we are screening a child who is 16 months, 29 days, which is the ASQ that you're using. If a child is 16 months, 29 days, what is the window? This is what I wanted to show you. On the left column is the child's age. And on the right, it's telling you which is the ASQ that you're going to use, okay? You're going to use the 16-month ASQ in this example that I'm giving you for a child who's 16 months, 29 days. So what if you only have 1 day to complete the ASQ? What could be the challenge? If you have only 1 day and the child is 16 months, 29 days, and you only have 1 day left, what can you do? Yeah, thank you. That's correct. That's correct. Perfect. I'm just looking at the chat. Yes, 16 months. If you have 1 day to do the ASQ, someone said you do that, you give the same one. But do you think that you would have, let's think about this. Probably the best practice is wait another, if the child has had no time to try any of those items on the ASQ, wait a day, print out the 18-month ASQ, and then take time to observe it. And I totally understand that it could be that your portal through the ELC says it's due today, like absolutely today, do the best that you can. right? But let the ELC know, like, this was done quickly, this might not be accurate. You know, you can wait a day, wait until the child is here, and then give the 18-month, right? You want to really capture a more accurate result on that screener. So think about that when you're screening a child. There is an age window, there is an administration chart for both the SE-2 and the 3. The good part of all of this, and I know that I'm showing you kind of these handouts, and there is a time frame to give these screeners. When children participating, so for children participating in the school readiness program, this is automatically done. So it calculates it based off of the child's date of birth. And so it's automatically done. You will know which is the ASQ that needs to be done for the child. You do have an ages and stages calculator tool, which calculates the child's age in months and in days. You do adjust the age if the child was born 3 or more weeks premature, right? That is only up to the age of 2, okay? Now, it doesn't happen very often, but I think it's so important to note that if you have toddlers 0 to 2, or toddlers like, children up to the age of 2, you may not know if the child was premature. But certainly it's a question to ask, you know, mom, auntie, we're completing the screener on your child. Was your child premature? Yes, if the parent answers or the caregiver answers yes, you can ask, oh, by how many weeks? If they say, oh, he was born or she was born at 36 weeks, you should be adjusting that ASQ, because we know that children who were born earlier may take a little bit longer. So if you weren't going to adjust it, you're going to kind of get an incorrect result, okay? The ASQ, the EFS mod and the ASQ online directly will tell you the age. And then I wanted to show you, there's an application. You can download the app. If we were together in a room, I'd have everybody take out their phones and download the ASQ app, the calculator app. Let me see how we're doing in time. Oh my goodness. Take a look at the tools. I don't think we have enough time to kind of share that with you, but it's such a great option to print it out, to look at it, to practice it instead of just going by what's on the computer. But you certainly have all these wonderful online tools by going to the ASQ website, okay? It does choose, again, the calculator calculates the age in months and days. It adjusts it if the child was premature, and it does choose the correct ASQ-3 and ASQ, but I thought it was so important to show you what it actually looks like, print it out, and work through it, okay? So working with families to screen these children in the school readiness program, we're going to talk a little bit about how you individualize this process to work with families from different backgrounds. Again, after children are enrolled in the school readiness program, parents consent to screening or they can decline, and they do have 2 choices. They complete the screenings themselves, where the parents have 5 days to complete the screenings online. And after 5 days, if they don't complete it after 5 days, then it's deferred to you, the provider or the early learning center. And if possible, I think it's a really great idea to prepare them before they complete it online. So it could be that a parent brings in a registration packet, and you could tell, if you're an administrator, you can tell the parent, you're going to complete a screener. You can even give them a copy. This is what it looks like. Try, kind of observing or practicing some of these things at home. Screening can be scary for families who don't understand why their child is being screened, right? And then also parents are offered screening every year at redetermination. When the screening is deferred to the provider, we've been talking about this, if possible, work together with the parent to complete that screener. And we're going to kind of go into how you can work together with a family. It's certainly much easier. I know that I have heard some providers or parents have told us, oh, I sat with the provider with the, in the school, in the computer, because families may not have access to a computer at home. And so they'll kind of do that, or paper copy, right? So what are some of these touch points? How can we engage? I know I saw a question in there. How can we engage a family with this whole process of screening a child? They enroll through EFS Mod. What are some of the touch points, right? We talked about the benefits of engaging with families and including them in the screening process. Sometimes I understand it could be easier for us as providers or you as providers to do the screening yourselves, but how can we make sure that the family and the child get the full advantage of this service? So when do you actually see or talk to the parents? When is it that you actually see them? Love to hear from you all. Do they call you on the phone, right? Do they say, I'm about to register, my child? I've consented to the screening. Let me see. So I'm looking at the questions. What if the teachers, I wanted to kind of address that too. Okay, I love this. I'm going to read some of these off the chat. Even if you feel, let me see, twice a year, someone said, Nilda, thank you. Twice a year, we do teacher-parent conferences where we discuss the developmental screening. Parents are given copies before their scheduled time. Love that. Preparing them ahead of time. I like that. That's great. So one question is, what if the teacher's ASQ results are very different from the parents' results? We see this usually either with very shy children because they behave differently at school, or when parents are in denial. How can we handle this situation? Okay, so we do see, and we talked about a couple of instances where children do behave differently at home versus at school. I think, and I'm going to kind of touch upon this as well. I think what happens is screening has, there's a different connotation that maybe some families may think or assume that screening is. But I think the more you engage and involve families in just your practice of care, the better it is. If I'm seeing a conference, I like to hear that, doing a conference ahead of time, giving them the copies ahead of time, say, Mom, you mentioned that he's, behaves well at home, he follows the routine. Can you tell me more about that? Because I noticed that sometimes he's struggling doing this, right? Is this the first time he's been in a center? You can even include that as part of your registration packet. Like, tell me about your child. Interests about, what are your child's favorite toys? Who lives at home with the child? Is there a brother, a sister, an auntie, a grandma? Like, getting to know this child more before they even come in to your center is so important, because it shows interest in not just checking off these boxes of screening for a parent that could be very scary for them. And also saying, I'm interested, like as a provider, we have a vested interest in making sure that we are monitoring your child's development, to making sure that if they need supports, we're willing to connect, and we have resources. So open houses, I know some early learning centers do open houses. There are certainly opportunities to talk about that. Also, what I will say, best practices in using screenings. I do believe and feel that universal screening should be done for all children in your center, regardless if they're participating in school readiness or not. I think if you already have access to these tools, it should be available to all your children enrolled, not just highlighting children in the school readiness program. Certainly it's a requirement, but I think best practice for all children is to be screened. And yes, of course, some parents deny the screener, and that's their right. That's their child. You mean deny, meaning decline the screener. Certainly, that's helpful. And, you know, I see Eileen is kind of giving more feedback on how you can engage the parents too. So we did talk about the accuracy of results. The goal is to have these screeners done as accurately as possible. But what might happen or not happen if screening results are inaccurate. When the screening results are not accurate, there's two things that can happen. Children that could benefit from the services or extra support may be missed. In other words, that they're under-referred. We may miss children that may they have needed something a little bit more. Screening results also might suggest that a child is at risk for delay, but that they're developing on schedule. So you might over-refer a child. It could be, you know, parents over-referring a child, if you don't do this accurately, could really cause a parent stress, right? They're like, what is this? Why, you know, why is my child coming out of concern? I'm so worried about that. I never understood why, or why do we do that screener? Even though on the portal or in their registration through the School Readiness Program, they are consenting, and it does say that they're consenting to screening, but it's really explaining to them, you know, this is part of us, you know, making sure a child is developing on schedule. You know, that if not, we could certainly help you with supports and just monitor and take a look at that. You know, that's, if we under refer, we're going to miss children. If we're over referring, what can happen is that you're kind of bogging down a system of early intervention assessments that's not necessary, right? So you want to make sure that those screeners are done as accurately as possible. See how we are on time. Okay. We're talking more, again, continue to talk about supporting parents to complete these screenings. Some parents may need support from, you know, with reading the questions. Even though the ASQ-3 and SE-2, they are written at a 4th to 6th grade level, reading level, but parents may need support reading through the questions together. Some parents may have difficulty focusing on screening or understanding the concepts due to stress. Parents may be going through their own things at home, whether it's depression or pressing issues in life. Support might include working together with it. You know, parents are supposed to be completing something online, and then they may like, I don't know what that means. I have so much going on. And then, but I think supporting a parent through that process can be so beneficial. Some parents, I know that there's mention of like, you know, negative experiences with systems. Certainly there are systems in that parents may have had really challenging experiences with, like dependency, child immigration, schools, special education. They may have just like these really bad feelings and experiences around that. So they might report differently. So it's important to really learn to make those connections with the families and helping them say, it's not a test. It's your child is not gonna, you know, get kicked out. It's really helping them feel better about why they're being screened and understanding that. But I think as a provider, it's important for you to keep in mind that it could be that these are some of these underlying concerns that parents may have had with these systems. Like I mentioned, dependency and things like that. Some parents might need linguistic supports. What do I mean by that? They may not, they may need translation services or interpretation services around that. They may, like I said, maybe the provider can ask the parents the questions and so on. Now there's adaptation support. There could be some activities that are not appropriate due to the, you know, family's values. For example, we talked about taking a materials kit that they can bring home, but also it could be that there is an item there where it says, can a child put, for example, a child puts a Cheerio inside of a container. Some families don't value playing with food, right? So what you're having to think about is, what is the question asking, right? The question is asking, can they just kind of figure it out by opening a container? You can use something else at home. Put a cotton ball inside of a little, Ziploc, or like a little container, right? That's what you're asking. So that's how they could use some help with the screening. You can adapt materials or activities. So let's say a family does not have the materials. Want to remind you that the ASQ-3 questions include examples of the materials. We did talk about letting them borrow some of the materials. They may not have puzzles. They may not have blocks at home. You can open up the classroom to the parent, invite them in. That's nice of them to say, oh, I feel uneasy. I don't have any of that stuff at home. Okay, mom, why don't you come in maybe 30 minutes before class starts, or later in the afternoon when you're picking them up. Let's sit down a little bit. Think about other ways that you can use other materials. So for example, if the ask is, can they stack blocks? What else can they use that's stacking? What are we really looking at? What's the intent behind the question? Maybe the family objects to the activity altogether. Let's try and figure out and problem solve how to adapt that. It's not always easy to, like I say here, the intent must be maintained, right? The intent of what we're assessing or what we're screening should be maintained. So for example, I talked about like what we're asking of the child to do is, can they stack blocks? We're looking at fine motor skills. It's not about the block, it's can they release and stack the block. So what else can we use, right? Can we use other items that can be stackable, right? Those are the things to look for. Okay, so there are opportunities that you can adapt or omit, or basically not answer. So we talked about the stacking of the blocks. For example, on the ASQ-3, the question is, can the child stack blocks? The area is where we're looking at the fine motor area, but the barrier is the family does not have blocks at home. I don't know. We don't have blocks. Mostly blocks are at school. So I don't know. Either A, we can send the items, we can send them some blocks to work on at home, or you can adapt it. You can adapt it and say, okay, mom, do you have spice cubes, like spice rack cubes or something like that, right? You can adapt those items. That means we want to make sure that the skill is assessed and you can adapt. Now on the SE-2, here's a question. Would you adapt or omit? On the SE-2, it asked if the child sleeps at least 8 hours in a 24-hour period. If the teacher's completing the SE-2, that child is not with you at night. The barrier is that they're not with you for 24 hours. So those are certainly some items that if you as a provider are completing this, you would omit that. You would not answer that question, okay? Remember that the teacher and the parent, for the 3, you can combine to 1, and then the SE-2, you should not be combining the SE-2. The parent can complete 1, and then the teacher or the provider can complete the other one, and then that's a place for discussion, right? You would omit, like omitting items is really as a last resort. You should be taking those days that you have to complete it to gather the information from the parent and the provider. So you do not have to make up things to disseminate this information out to families. ASQ, or Brooks Publishing, has so many resources to provide to families. We talked about sharing things ahead of time with families, but you can certainly download these things and give these tools out whenever possible, right? The one on the left says Family Guide to ASQ. This is already printed. It's already available for free. Some of these materials, you may have to talk to your local ELC to see if you can access these materials, but it already gives the parent the idea of, or the information about, why is screening important? What are these tools? Before you log on to the portal, Here are some things to know, right? Tips to complete it. Certainly you can introduce the screening by giving them copies. I saw someone there on the chat talking about, we do twice a year conferences, but you can give this ahead of time as part of the registration packets. Like this is what we're doing. This is what we do here in the center. And then you even have ASQ-3 materials list. So even there as an example, there's a 16-month questionnaire. These are some of the materials that you're going to need. All of these really easy to read and understand. And even remember too, that redetermination is a really good time also to engage parents in screening. Even if the parent deferred the screening, remember that you can still work together to complete the screenings. It is recommended to prepare the parents by using these resources. You can certainly go over all of these questions and answers with the parents, but giving them something ahead of time is a really, really nice opportunity to inform them about what's happening so that it's not such a scary thing for them. So how to access and complete the screenings online. You, of course, should know this pretty well. You do have screening deadlines and timing. You're going to log into your portal weekly to find the screenings due. You do have this time frame to complete and enter into EFS mod, and you're going to complete it together with the family. If possible, work off of the paper copies. I know sometimes some parents have trouble like doing things online, so bring them into your center to have them work off of the copy and then observe and try these activities. Have the parents complete the overall section. Those are those last questions that ask about the family health history, anything that's concerning, and have the parents complete the SE. And let's see, and then that last part is you're going to go into the portal and enter the exact answers online. Results are automatically calculated. So you don't have to do anything as far as manually scoring, anything like that. This is just more about EFS mod with the scores, questionnaires. It generates the screening results. If there are no concerns, the results are immediately available to parents in the portal. If there are concerns, your ELC will review the results, and we mentioned it before with that workflow. The ELC is going to do a concern analysis. We're going to check in with parents and teachers. We'll observe the child in the classroom. We may conduct other screeners or assessments. And if necessary, we'll certainly, the ELC collaborates with the providers and the parents to create what's like an action plan, or you may have seen it as a child support plan to address any of these areas of concern. Or the Early Learning Coalition and related agencies might refer to early steps or fiddlers or any other healthcare provider. So talking to parents about screening, you want to plan for cultural or language considerations. You certainly want to celebrate the child's strengths, like, oh my goodness, he came in not even 2 weeks ago and he's doing so well. He's adjusting really, really well. Discussing the purpose of the screening and using more family-friendly, strength-based language. So this is just another way of using these kind of words that we've heard in the past. So instead of test, this is a tool. This is a screener. It's a questionnaire. I've used words like it's a checklist instead of it's a test, because it's not a test. It's just like, let's just do it. Use a little tool and we're going to screen and we're going to ask you some questions. Your child passed, they're normal. Another way of using this in a strength-based way is they're on schedule. They're developing on schedule, right? They didn't pass. They're not normal. They have a disability. When you're looking at these areas of the results, they came out in monitoring. These are just areas that we want to support. If it came out in a concern area, what does that mean? This is where mom or dad, we want to get a little bit more information as to why. Special education services, again, it could be something that a parent may feel a little bit off about. So you want to say, instead of, oh, they need special education services. No, there are agencies that can provide these services to help support your child in school. Okay. So again, talking to parents about screening, using their strength is important. Think about cultural language considerations, going from using these kinds of words to these instead, right? Using more of a family-friendly language is going to be, also helps to connect with families a little bit better. This is that snapshot that you all see in the portal. If this is new to you, this is what it looks like in the ASQ online portal EFS mod. This is where you see the typical monitoring concern. And then the overall responses are there as well. So this is just a quick snapshot of what these look like. So again, we talked about kind of using that family-friendly language, typical or on schedule. Hey, these are areas of strength. This is what he's doing really great at. This is how, you know, she's doing great, or she's doing really well in these areas. Monitor areas, the way that you want to talk to them about these screening results. They could be, monitoring areas can be supported. They might need a little bit more extra practice and support. Children who come out in these areas, they catch up real quickly. And here's some activities, right? Here are some activities that you can do at home with your child. Concern, what does that mean? Wait, why is my child in the concern area? I don't understand. What do you mean concern, right? And that's where parents can feel or act, respond defensively. And here's some language to support that. There's many reasons why. A child who is not hearing well may be behind in their communication skills. What's really important? We want to know why. Why is that? But the ELC can help you get more information, checking in with, the primary care physician, asking the parent, I'm curious, you're right. He came out in this area, has, maybe, is he hearing well? Are you seeing that at home? I'm curious too. But certainly the ELC can support that. Now, what we will say is that ELC is going to be reviewing these concerns with the parents. So that may not be your responsibility as a provider, but we want you to understand that there certainly is language that you can use, because a parent may be coming to you directly, asking about why their child came out with these, concerns or these results. And you do have such an important relationship with them. So you're kind of like those frontline workers, right? But the ELC is certainly going to help address that.
I have one quick thing to add, Melissa, if you don't mind. Just
to go back?
If you don't mind, yes, just to the results screen that you had up, which is so great. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that I know that comment section is almost blocked off, but we know that you have the opportunity to enter comments in this area, and it's such an important area for you to enter comments. However, we want you to be mindful of what's entered in this area, because this particular screen is available to not just the coalition and yourselves in your provider portal, but also in the family portal. So just to reinforce what Melissa was saying about using language that's family friendly, we want to make sure that you are using family friendly language in this particular area, because our families are going to be reading this when they view the results for the screening. So just wanted to add that little tidbit and let you know you're doing amazing. We have 15 minutes left, so great job.
Thank you, Eileen. Yes, so important. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, they have access to this information. If you as a provider have concerns, certainly reach out to your ELC. If you're a direct teacher, reach out to your director. If that gets tricky, because those conversations can be tricky and you have your own personal concerns, there are resources to help you. You're not doing this alone, okay? The ASQ has play activities, like they're amazing, right? They're easy to use, easy to understand. You do have activities available on ASQ Online. They're free to download. You don't have to pay for these activities. It has the ASQ activities. So the one on the bottom left, it kind of has activities for all areas. And then you have here on the right, some SE-2 activities and for development in English, Spanish. I think there's additional languages. I'm not 100%. I think there are other languages available. I will certainly find that out for you. But remember that some of these may be helpful to families, but not all parents. Oops, sorry. Thought I heard someone. But you can certainly visit the agesandsages.com website for free activities. For any individualized follow-up for monitor or concern areas, there are specific targeted activities. If you don't have access to this, you can certainly reach out to your program owner or your ELC to determine if you can access these. These are targeted areas and activities that are specific to those domains. And these are books. These are nice books that help focus on these specific domains. Oh my goodness, we're at 10 minutes out. What questions do you have? We still have a couple more slides, but I'm hoping that this should be a tool that you're very familiar with to use. I know that you're used to entering things online. I will push to, I would love to see you guys in person to really like touch the ASQ, highlight the ASQ and have like a really nice working group. But I'm so thankful that we have this forum to talk about the importance of screening, because these little ones, look at this little one here. Hopefully this is the reason why we're doing it, right? These little ones. And I just wanted to kind of tail end on thinking about what is that one thing. It's so much information, but what is that one thing that's sticking with you, right? You can certainly offer it in the chat. Thinking about maybe what's another practice you might want to incorporate in your line of work. What are some challenges you might face in incorporating some of this information in your work, and the benefits. We talked about a lot of really nice opportunities for you all to connect with your families, because we're doing it all for these little ones and for the betterment of that relationship between the providers and the families. And how will this information impact your work with the children and the families that you serve? And what is that one specific thing you want to take back with you? I know that there's going to be additional, after this session, additional conversations about speaking to one of the authors of the ASQ, Liz Twombly and Gentina Clifford. That's so exciting. I'm so excited to see that too. But know that we're here to support you. We're hoping that you've got some really good information about the screener. Pauline says family is very important. Yes, this child is not just a baby or a child. It is a child in the context of relationships. And the work that you are all doing is around the relationship that the child is in, is with the teacher, with the family, with the director. This is where their little brains are growing at such a rapid pace, and you have such an important role, and hoping that this is that one piece to know that it can serve as a really great dialogue with families about their child. It's not post-assessment time right now. You will get a link. I didn't want to, that was before, but you will get a link to take that post-assessment. Again, this is not for a grade. You're not going to get in trouble or anything like that. This just helps us understand where is it that we might be able to grow, or maybe other opportunities to talk and dive in even more about tools like the ASQ-3 and the ASQ-SE. There is our information, the ELC, Miami-Dade County, and the Warm Line. Of course, those who have launched this amazing event today. That's the Warm Line's direct number, and Citrus Health Network, which is the agency that I am with in partnership with the ELC. We are local here in Miami-Dade County. You can contact us. And I think we kind of finished a little
bit of information on the post-assessment. As Melissa mentioned, we initially were going to add it on here for you to take. However, because there was some folks coming in a little bit later, we want to make sure that you understand all of you that have been in this particular training for the majority of the time will receive a link for the post assessment. Like Melissa mentioned, this is not intended for you to stress over. But instead, we are going to be establishing a coaching protocol, which basically means that we are going to meet with you to go over the areas that maybe you need a little more help or information on, which is great. And then in the end, you can become a screening champion just like we are. And we're very, very excited to do that. So just look out for that link, and we ask that you do take it because it will be just a good assessment of what you've understood from this training and what we need to do moving forward. And we do have a couple other questions, Melissa, that we have on the chat. So we have ASQ-3 could be used for an administration process. So I don't know if Anna wants to give us more context to her question. I'm not sure that I understand it completely, so that's why I wasn't answering it. But Anna, if you're able to elaborate on that. And then we have a couple other comments that are just absolutely great on the chat. So thank you.
Yeah, I see. Yes, Anna. So if you want to just type in the chat just a little bit more about that, we can certainly help answer that.
Sure. And then we have Anne Marie, sorry to interrupt once more. And she went ahead and entered the actual email and direct line for the warm line. So the number on the screen is the main number for the ELC, but the number in the chat is the number for the warm line if you wanted to go ahead and reach out to us there. So thank you for that, Anne Marie.
Someone in the chat offered, it's not just another important thing to do, but a very important tool for the benefit of the child. So sorry, it's not for all in the center and not just school readiness. This is my takeaway. Yeah, I think if you already have access to these materials, do it for all of the children. So it's not, and I believe if I'm not mistaken, there was there's a sign, and I'm going to ask the authors of the ASQ about it, but there is a sign that I've seen posted in one of their trainings that a center has, we do ASQ, like a really cute promotional item. And that's like telling, this is important. Your child's development is important. The betterment of your child, the wellness, the overall wellness of your child is important. So you can certainly promote that across your center and not just for school readiness children. And maybe for those who don't have school readiness, you work off of a hand paper copy because they don't need to enter results in a portal, right? But that's just part of a practice that you could say, okay, you're not in school readiness, or they don't need to know that. You can say, here, mom, we do screenings here and let's complete one together. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that that's a nice takeaway. You can certainly do that. So any other questions? What other questions do you have? I'm just looking at the chat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're of course available if anything pops up, because we don't want to put anybody on a spot like, oh, I don't have a question now. Sometimes you do. After, maybe next week, maybe in a couple of days, something comes to you, reach out. You can reach out to the warm line. You can reach out to us at Citrus if you had any questions or something that was not clear. Let me stop share. Think. Anything else? Well, we have 4 minutes left.
I'm going to go ahead and share the documents just one more time because I know some folks came in a little bit later. So these are documents in a PDF format that you can use that Melissa referenced today during the training. So some of them are adaptable that you can kind of edit and use at your center, which is so great. And some are just informative. So again, just go ahead and use those at your leisure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen, for sharing that information. We hope this was an informational, helpful session. And I think there's going to be really other great information later on this morning.
Absolutely. I hope you stick around because it's going to be such a great conversation with our panelists. Okay, some of you aren't seeing the document. Let me add it once again. So it is showing up as just kind of like a rectangle with a little red square. Hopefully everyone's seeing it. I've shared it a couple times.
So if you look in the chat, there's like a little, if you recognize a PDF logo and then has a little arrow pointing down, that's where you can, and let me see. Yeah, it'll, when you hover your cursor over, it'll say click to download, and then it'll just pop into, let's see. Yeah, click on it and then download it. Thank you for that, for providing that support.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the question was, I'm trying to go back to the, I don't know why I can't scroll up. Ooh, you guys are quick at chatting. Was that if it's part of if the ASQ can be part of an admission process?
Oh, okay. So yeah, we often recommend our centers that want to screen center-wide to put that consent form in your registration packet or in your enrollment packet. That way you have consent across the board. But remember that all school readiness families are providing specific consent when they are enrolling. So when they are completing their paperwork online is when they provide either a consent or decline for screening. So you have to be very honed into those particular children. But for everyone else in your center, you can specifically have a consent form that you develop that will just say that you're going to be screening the children at your center, and you can specify, you know, timeframes if you'd like. And then you can go ahead and screen those children separately, like Melissa said, using paper copies. And I'm going to go ahead and put our specific email on the chat. And these are for any ASQ related questions that you have, whether it's kind of technical questions or how to screen, when to screen, what children am I, you know, pending, anything like that. You can go ahead and email us at a very specific email. It's asq@elcmdm.org. It's the quickest way to get a hold of us and get a response. So that's also coming into the chat right now. And we're happy to help you with any questions that you may have, whether it's document wise that you didn't get today, or questions that you may have.